welcome to the stream. Sorry for the stream crash. It accidentally. Sorry for the stream crash. Okay. What I'm gonna be doing, I don't know what I'm gonna be doing. I'm just gonna be reacting to random things. I put the sound on a little bit. I was setting up for the stream.
Some people take the straight path in life. But at Arizona State University, we respect your twists and turns. They make our online students more driven to excel in their professional lives. That's why our personalized suite of services empowers you with innovative resources and staff that sticks with you.
YouTube
Make
Premium.
your next turn with one of our 200-plus programs at ASU.
I'll pay for YouTube Premium
a top
later.
10 university for
not
online
right now.
bachelor's programs. Click the ad on your screen to learn more about Arizona State University online.
Do you need health insurance for your children? The Children's Health Insurance Program, also known as CHIP, provides quality, affordable health insurance for Pennsylvania kids. CHIP ensures that kids can... For your children, the Children's Health Insurance Program, also known as CHIP, provides quality, affordable health insurance for Pennsylvania kids. CHIP ensures that kids can...
Cool. Do I play the game? Probably, yeah, I do. As you probably saw when I started the setup for the video. Cool. Do I play the game? Probably, yeah, I do. As you probably saw when I started the setup for the video.
Hey y'all, Scott here.
This is gonna
I
be a
realize
reaction
today's
video.
youth is way into getting corrupted, so it's only fair to give every possible good or service an age-appropriate rating. Introducing the Food Eating and Ratings Association, or FEAR for short, where we give all food on the market a rating so you can decide if it's right for you and your kids. E for edible, R for ranch, and ITLFN. It tastes like f***ing nickels.
Rated everyone 10 and up.
What I would give to win a sweepstakes dinner with that guy. The ESRB, the narcs who made us play Simpsons Hit and Run instead of Grand Theft Auto 3. They played a major role in helping to mitigate some video game controversies, even when there's been more of them after the rating system was established. Media has always been under scrutiny for being bad influences on our youth. Television, film, music, literature, all have had countless controversies surrounding them in terms of content. Rock and roll was thought to corrupt the youth when it debuted. Schindler's List was broadcast on network television unedited. You can tell that ruffled a few feathers. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Gremlins were both rated PG and featured some not-so-PG elements, and I'm still not allowed to read Catcher in the Rye. But video games were always seen as the worst of all those mediums. With a violent movie, you're watching a killer. With a violent video game, You are the killer! There have been so many controversies surrounding games. Pinball machines were outlawed for a while due to being considered gambling, leading to 70s arcade games facing outcry, the game Death Race shocking many for its portrayal of running over gremlins. Gacha's controls were designed to look like Custer's Revenge on Atari 2600, doing the whole Custer's Revenge thing. And as the years went on, technology advanced, and violent video games weren't, oh, it kinda looks like you're killing people. They were more like... Video games as a whole were leading up to that moment. Video games were becoming more graphic, and thus raised more eyebrows. In the arcade, games like Splatterhouse just rubbed blood and gore into your face. Narc was an incredibly violent one where you blew up dozens of people, but they were all drug dealers and the game had an anti-drug message. And of course, Mortal Kombat. The fighting game craze started with Street Fighter II in 1991, and a year later, Mortal Kombat came out and had to stand out from the crowd. It utilized digitized graphics, which looked insane at the time. It was so realistic. But also to help it stand out, it had a little help from our friend Gore. The game already caused tons of controversy due to this, but it was multiplied exponentially when the game made its way to home consoles, especially the Sega Genesis. Positioning the Sega Genesis as the more adult console, Sega felt the need to live up to that reputation by allowing more mature games on the system while also imposing less censorship than Nintendo. This was famously done with the home versions of Mortal Kombat. While both the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis versions initially lacked the blood and gore of the arcade version, all you had to do on the Genesis was enter in that sweet cheat code to enable it. While this made the Genesis port a hit with kids, it didn't bode well with parents and even the US government. December 9th, 1993 was the day a congressional hearing was held to discuss violent video games and a potential system to rate the games based on their content and themes. Mortal Kombat was a major talking point alongside the games Lethal Enforcers, Night Trap, and later on Doom. Yeah, the content in these games were more mature than others, but a lot of the examples of things these games did that went too far feel a bit over-exaggerated. Lethal Enforcers used a blue toy gun and had you shooting bad guys as a police officer. Night Trap was a full-motion video game for the Sega CD that was as harmless as a lame direct-to-video B-movie. And Mortal Kombat, yeah, I have no excuse for that one. Representatives for Nintendo and Sega were present, with Nintendo's Howard Lincoln standing strong and just throwing Sega under the bus, acting like Night Trap was the most heinous thing ever constructed by man.
Obviously, it would not pass our guidelines. This game, which as you've indicated, promotes violence against women, simply has no place in our society.
This scene from Night Trap was the one everybody got up in arms about. You can't look at this scene and say, oh man, this is poisoning the minds of our youth. Like, what's going on here? To anyone watching this scene, it looks like a bunch of burglars are pumping a girl's neck with some machine, which led to everybody saying, I don't know what's going on, but I don't like it! Even though at the time of the hearing there would be no technical way for Night Trap to run on a Nintendo console, Lincoln made one thing very clear.
And let me say that for the record, I want to state that Night Trap will never appear on a Nintendo system.
Nintendo wasn't immune to criticism during the hearing, but Sega was getting absolutely slaughtered, mainly due to the significant increase in mature themes with games on Sega platforms. With Mortal Kombat's Blood and their own game Night Trap, they had it rough that day. In their defense, Sega initiated their own rating system a few months before the hearing. GA for general audiences, MA13 for 13-year-olds and older, and MA17 for 17-year-olds and older. They were blasted for possibly only using a rating system to fight the backlash and due to the age ratings being too vague, even though the ESRB ratings are basically the same thing!
This is a copy of the packaging. There was no rating on this game at all when the game was introduced. Small children bought this at Toys R Us, and he knows that as well as I do. When they started getting heat about this game, then they adopted the rating system and put ratings on it.
While a lot of the arguments made during this time were obviously kind of uninformed and pretty silly, it simply made sense for video games to receive content ratings just like movies and television, especially considering the drastic differences between content and games. They weren't necessarily trying to censor games, rather making sure consumers were aware of what they were buying. More hearings were held later in 1994, and it was agreed upon most game companies to initiate a game rating system, with major retail outlets making it clear they would not buy games without a rating. That year would see the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, Board, or the
This is their
ESRB,
live
an
reaction
organization
video.
that gives video games age-appropriate ratings. Developers send in videos of their projects showcasing standard gameplay and what could be deemed more objectionable content to receive one of initially 5 ratings: early childhood, kids to adults, teen, mature, or adults only. Later in 1998, kids to adults was renamed to everyone, and in 2005 the new everyone 10 and up rating was introduced with Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. Because this game couldn't have possibly been rated E for everyone, that's fucking ridiculous. Later the design of the ratings changed to pure black letters, with a slight design revision in 2013. Good? Remember these spray paint stencil designs? There's something oddly charming about the old school look of these ratings, especially the K to A one, even though I definitely prefer E for everyone, as it's way more straightforward and clear. Back during the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox era, it felt like there was a nice variety of games rated E, T, and M. Nowadays, it feels more like it's everything or nothing. Honestly, how many times have you seen a T-rated game this generation? Of course, there's the elusive EC and AO. EC is fairly uncommon, mainly used on edutainment games on the PC. ESRB's website claims that only 289 games have been given the rating. On the exact opposite side of the spectrum, Adults Only is by far the rarest rating, with only 27 games rated as such. Now, there's really not a ton of games rated AO for a few reasons, one of them being the fact that most AO rated games are basically... Another being the fact that all console manufacturers have a policy against AO games, stating that they aren't allowed on the platforms, and similarly, most retail chains won't carry products rated AO. This is the main reason we don't see the rating too often. If developers actually want to sell their game and it happens to get rated AO, they have to go in there and change some things up. More recently, the game Agony received the rating, and the developers had to tone the violence down to go full-on M-rated so it could be released on consoles. Due to the Big Three's policies, the majority of AO games have only appeared on PC, exceptions being the Philips CDI and a DVD game. However, we do have 2 more examples of AO games on consoles, one being Thrill Kill on the PS1. The game got hit with an AO rating, but never released commercially. You can find the ROM online crazy easily, though. The other one was... Oh, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, so that's why CJ isn't in Smash Brothers. After the game's release, an unfinished sex scene was found in the game's files, later dubbed as the Hot Coffee mod. It wasn't accessible without hacking the game, but people were angry, even though the game was already rated M. And like I said, it wasn't accessible without hacking. It was nothing special. You get the same experience from watching 2 action figures going at it, but it was a big enough deal that the game was re-rated AO and pulled from shelves, which led to Rockstar re-releasing the game to re-achieve an M rating, which is why you'll see many copies of San Andreas with 2nd edition written on them. A similar situation went down with Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, where a random somebody made a nude mod for the game. It was discovered deep within the game's files existed the art the mod used for the nudity. That was uncalled for. Nowadays, it feels like more mature content is getting the pass within lower age ratings. Indigo Prophecy's unedited PC release was originally given an AO rating, but recently with the release of an uncensored remastered version, it was given an M. Also, Galgun Double Peace is a game where you shoot pheromones at girls and it's rated E for everyone. Guys, society finally accepts us. It was a misprint. Sometimes a game's rating can leave you perplexed, like, how the f***? How are so many Kirby games rated E10+? Like, I get it, Kirby games can get kind of intense, but too intense for a 7-year-old? Games in series well known for being one specific rating can change things up at a moment's notice, and it weirds me out. Dark Souls? Oh yeah, big M-rated series. Okay, Batman Arkham series. Well, Phoenix Wright. Oh, come on. Fight Night, an EA Sports title, easy contender for family fun, Jesus. When you look at this, ESRB.org has a description of content found in games that could be objectionable. I gotta say, many M-rated games definitely have a hearty dose of fucking shit. With ESRB being around for nearly 25 years, it's maintained its place as one of the most important aspects of the gaming industry. That,
this is
with
one
the
way
exception of
to
digital
make sure
games,
that my
kids
content
can buy
is
as
not
many
made for
M-rated
kids.
games as they
So
want. Like,
that's
kid
why
walks into
I
the store,
curse my
buys
video.
PlayStation Network,
I just want to do
goes
that
home,
way
buys
the
Bloody
content
McSex
cannot
scene in
be
the game,
made
and
for
becomes
kids.
Genghis Khan. Like, come on, I thought we got rid of that guy. Disregarding that, so many parents just buy their kids M-rated games with no second thought. They just don't look at the ratings and then blame the game for being too vulgar for their kids. Why don't you actually be a parent and regulate what media your child consumes rather than blaming the media itself? Different people are into different things, meaning not every piece of media produced is going to be G-rated. That's true concerning everything, especially video games. Most video games that garner controversy for being unsuitable for children are already rated M. But is that ever brought up when all these big shots who know nothing about video games talk about how video games are corrupting society? No, they just talk about how the newest Call of Duty is poisoning our children when, guys, Guys! It's absolutely ridiculous how hard it is for people to notice the bold black letter in the corner of these games. Well, I'm taking a stand. We need to expand the size of these things. It's for the kids.
Alright, another one. Not an ad.
Doctors need to monitor patients at home, so having the most reliable network really matters.
Once upon a time, I took a wrong turn. Your ass ain't gonna last 1 week.
Hey all, Scott here. I just got back from an art auction and I'm really excited to finally have such a pristine piece of art in my home. It's something people look at and say, oh shit, I just realized this is the box art for Wario World. What's the first thing you think of when you hear Super Bust a Move? Wrong. This. Are video games art is one of the dumbest questions out there in my opinion. Of course they are. One video game can include millions of pieces of art in itself. 3D models, backgrounds, textures. Literally, if just one thing from a video game was smacked onto a piece of paper and hung up in an art museum, it wouldn't stick out at all. But now when all this art with musical pieces, acting, and writing is put into this one thing you can control, it's disqualified as a form of creative expression. Seriously, why is this even a debate? A fork is art, why can't arms be? Art is subjective. I personally believe anything and everything can be considered art in some way, though I don't understand why video games have had a rough history being considered it. I think it's an argument primarily made by old guys who just think video games are nothing more than Space Invaders and are just silly things people waste their lives on. I guess something like some fish painted by Andy Warhol carries more meaning behind it than Pac-Man. I mean, this was just made as a cheap joyride in a pizza parlor. This was made to be sold for lots of money to be displayed in some rich guy's living room. This is art. For those who still don't believe video games are art, I will bring up one last thing. The video game's box art. I mean, it says art right there. There's no escape from this one. Art made to advertise and represent more art. A video game's box art is generally one of the first things I think of when the game's name is brought up. It's the image that's supposed to represent everything that game is and the first thing you see when picking up a game, for better or for worse. Seeing the finalized box art is one of my favorite moments with the build-up to a game's release. I love seeing how artists take everything you need to know about the game and cram it into one image. It's the picture you'll see whenever popping the case open to play it, how the product will look on store shelves, the main image that will forever be associated with the game. Box art doesn't seem that important at first, but it's way more crucial than you may think. Good box art needs to be a perfect balance between marketing, good-looking art and composition, and an accurate representation of the actual game. Atari got 2 of these, right? The Atari 2600 had some of the most gorgeous box art ever, but the problem was the box looked like this, and the game looked like this. Box art was too good in this era. Most video game purchases were completely based off of the box art at this time. Without the internet, consumers would just walk into the store and pick the game with the most appealing name and artwork, which of course led to some hearty buyer's remorse with a lot of these games. In my opinion, this was one of the factors of the video game crash of 1983. Low quality products were flooding the market. The fact that most of them had appealing art on the cover made people want to buy them, and when they bring it home, it made them want to swear off video games for life. Activision did a pretty good job conveying what their games were like via the covers, but that also made these things crazy boring. Look at this! When Nintendo brought out the NES in 1985, they didn't want to repeat Atari and all the other video game manufacturers' mistakes. One of the key examples of this is their choice of box art with their early titles on the console. Instead of, whoa, we got, oh. The black box NES games were Nintendo published titles that weren't trying to fool anybody, just sprite art from the game, that's it. Yeah, that was pretty boring, especially compared to what they got in Japan with the Famicom, but they thought it was necessary. There's no way you can mislead a consumer with a box like this, even though I'm sure this tactic ensured nobody would buy Clu Clu Land. What the hell kind of game do you think this is? This didn't last long though, as Nintendo and all other publishers got a lot more creative with box art, and it was for the best. Sure, we were getting dangerously close to Atari levels of misrepresenting the actual product, but the NES was far more capable of displaying graphics. Atari required you to use your imagination a lot more, and while the box art gave you a good idea as to what you should be picturing the game as sometimes they were reaching. On the NES with something like Ninja Gaiden, yeah, that looks like a ninja. Batman, yeah, that looks like a Batman. NES Open Tournament Golf, yeah, that looks like a golf. The box art looked a billion times better than the actual games, but they weren't too far off to the point where it felt like you were getting ripped off most of the time. Of course, with games in this era, we got some of the most legendary boxes of all time, some absolutely gorgeous artwork. and some very poorly drawn ones, but hey, at least we got all of these. Back then, a shield, a sword, or some magical orb was enough to tell you this is a fantasy adventure game. A lot of the NES box art could be considered either super detailed, well-painted epics, simple cartoon character front and center, or stolen assets. The original Metal Gear cover, ripped right from Terminator. Castlevania 2, this Dungeons & Dragons cover. Contra, Predator. But hey, at least these all look nice. The Sega Master System tried a unique tactic with box art. As one of Nintendo's main competitors in the 8-bit era, right when they started, they decided to give up. It's pretty obvious they were attempting something like what Nintendo did with the black box games, but instead of actual sprite art from the games, they opted for clip art creators to draw one small picture and smack it on graph paper. These boxes have their charm, but for all the wrong reasons. They're not actually good, but it's such an iconic part of the Master System's image here in North America that it's somewhat endearing. And then I look at the boxes other countries got. Please God, explain this. Box art in the early to mid 90s began to become something special. The Sega Genesis and SNES had the capabilities to display graphics even more on par with the actual cover. With these games, it's like the artist took something that happens in the game and made a piece of artwork out of it, instead of drawing what the game was meant to represent like with previous generations of box art. Not only was everything becoming better representations of the actual video game, but the art itself was becoming better and better. There was also the box art for Phalanx. Some of the most iconic SNES and Genesis box art had so many little details crammed into them, while others remained simple and elegant. Sure, some of these are so cheesy it stings nowadays, but they do a good job representing the game, and it's obvious these weren't consumed by marketing strategies and were just following a template to ensure great sales. It felt like an artist was just doing what they thought would look cool. But then 3D games started to become the norm, and because of that, we reach an ugly era of box art. You just squirt a 3D model of a character that doesn't age well into a cover and bada bing bada boom we have a box. Box art felt more like a screenshot rather than actual box art. Well, these were kind of cool at the time with 3D really starting to take over.
Yeah,
they
the
used to be
PS1
cool.
early PS2
They're not really
era
cool
of box
anymore.
art definitely wasn't as timeless as I'd want it to be, and really isn't my favorite. A lot of these feel cheap and tacky. You look at box art that was hand-drawn and it's gorgeous. You can feel the passion behind it. For Sonic art, let's just have 3D models of Sonic and friends running instead of the spectacular 2D art. Why? This generation wasn't terrible, there was definitely some good stuff, but this was the beginning of a trend in box art that's led us to where we are now. We very rarely see art like this anymore because there's no need for it. You can take an in-game model, spruce it up with extra detail and maybe a higher polygon count and blam. Now, I don't think most box art nowadays is bad. I think most AAA games have great composition. Everything is aligned in satisfying ways. With a fair amount of them, it's easy to get what the game is going to be about. The overall art is well done, but a lot of the soul is gone. Like, you think somebody made Bioshock Infinite's cover art and said, yep, I'm proud? Like I said with modern box art, the overall composition is fine. This is one of the worst box arts I've ever seen. Yes, a lot of this showcases stuff that does indeed represent Bioshock Infinite in some manner, but it's so obvious this was done for marketing purposes. Oh, we're trying to advertise this game to men who want to shoot things. Hey, here's Booker DeWitt with a gun! Honestly, this could be the cover to like a billion other games and it would work. This doesn't represent Infinite to me at all. It literally focuses on somebody you barely see in the game because it's in first person. It doesn't feature any of the game's setting, just fire and sky, no other major characters featured, nothing. For a game as thematically unique as Bioshock Infinite, this box art doesn't display anything that makes it unique. Now, there is a reversible cover which does a much better job representing the game. A lot of companies do this, having an alternative cover, more often than not one that does a better job representing the game, on the other side, so if you don't like the standard art conjured up by marketing folks, well, you can just flip it, here you go. My problem with this is I like all my games to be as uniform as possible, so with something like Bioshock Infinite, I gotta stick to the regular art sadly to keep that cursed Xbox 360 logo on the spine. At least with the Game of the Year edition, they added Elizabeth, which I think makes it a much better representation of the actual game, considering she's the most memorable and iconic character of that game. Now, if we're staying in the year 2013, we can take a look at The Last of Us as an example of good modern box art. This shows off the dynamic between the characters of Ellie and Joel. Ellie gets top billing with Joel looking back at her ensuring her safety. This box art tells a story and perfectly represents the final game. Of course, the higher-ups tried to cut Ellie from the box art entirely and make it just about Joel, and thankfully Naughty Dog refused. Actually, I have the original box art for The Last of Us that marketing execs wanted for the game. Oh. With Bioshock Infinite being multi-platform and The Last of Us being exclusive to the PS3 at the time, Bioshock Infinite did sell more than The Last of Us initially. But how much you want to bet it's because it was on multiple platforms, not because some generic guy with a gun was on the cover. The Last of Us sold 7 million units on the PS3 alone, with Infinite selling around 11 million across everything. I don't think that gap was because of the box art, it was because of console exclusivity. But I'm sure the higher-ups look at those numbers and assume it was all in the box art. Companies seem to be obsessed with having marketable covers. They all seem to push the same exact template for guaranteed high sales, but I think that makes a lot of covers feel completely generic. This isn't Doom. You're trying to tell me we go from the first Doom with box art like this to this? I've seen this argument online so many times about this particular cover, but it's true. This could be any shooter with a sort of mech suit. It's terrible. We do get a reversible cover, which was the main cover of the Nintendo Switch version of the game that released later. I guess they thought, people know this is a good game now.
Do
we can give
argue
the Switch
about
the better
that.
box art. They did a similar thing with Wolfenstein 2 as well. But the generic box art complaint, the one that says this can be any game, in my opinion, is a huge problem, and it's something we primarily see here in the States. From what I've noticed, while North America can have some great box arts, they seem to be more marketing focused. Japan can get stupid artsy with them, and more times than not, Japan usually gets the better box art out of all territories. And then there's Europe. It's a complete gamble if Europe gets either the Japan art, the North American art, or just whatever the hell they conjure up over there. Box art regional differences are fascinating, one of the more well-known ones being the Kirby series, with North America mostly pissing Kirby off. Japan usually has Kirby being Kirby, happily posing with his friends or just having a good time. I'm sure here Nintendo of America wasn't trying to make Kirby angry, but rather make him look determined, like he's on some epic quest or something. And that way some people will go, oh, he looks cute, and others go, oh, he looks badass. America seems to be on a huge epic scale, I've noticed. As an example, another great modern cover, The Legend of Zelda
Japan's
Breath
like, oh,
of the
that's
Wild.
cute.
This
North
is the
America's
perfect
like, oh, I
box
got
art for
this.
this game. Even Link, the central character here, isn't looking at the viewer, he's looking away at the main focus of the game, its world. It's in the title, Breath of the Wild. It gives off the vibe that the world within the game is about to give you the adventure of a lifetime,
Wii U
which
version,
is in fact
not
what it
good
does.
one.
While Japan had the same art, Europe went for a different take. This doesn't feel like an epic quest, this feels like elf shit. This is still very good art, but I feel like the actual game is more well represented via the North American and Japanese versions. This one, Link isn't even looking at what awaits him, he's looking directly at you. And while you see more of the world in the European cover, the overall tone and color scheme is happy and jovial, which isn't really what I think of with this game. The world is in ruins, you have to save it, which I think comes across more with this one. One of the more notorious regional changes was Eco. You see, this one tells a story. This one tells me what toy I'm gonna get in my Happy Meal. You see what I meant with the PS1, early PS2 era? We got this. Somebody thought this was good. Resident Evil 4 is one I'm sure I'll get flack for here. The European covers across the GameCube, PS2, and Wii are so cool looking. These are terrible in comparison, but I think they do a much better job showcasing the actual game. This is a rare case where this looks better, this would be a great poster, but I think these are better box arts for the game. Let's be honest here, Resident Evil 4, as good as it is, isn't as artsy-fartsy as this cover suggests. Again, this is way better, but this tells you what to expect. North American marketing with video games has always been a lot more loud, wacky, and obnoxious compared to other countries, and while that reached its peak in the 90s and has died down tremendously by now, it still seeps through with modern box art while other regions get beautiful, more simplistic images. Nier Automata's Japanese box art is absolutely gorgeous, while the North American variety looks cheaper and sort of cheesy in comparison. Some designs are so simple that they're oddly beautiful in a way. You feel a sense of pride and confidence with them, like, hey, we don't need art, our game's that good. Like so many of the early Zelda games basically just shouted, yeah, this is a Zelda game, f*** you. You don't need anything else, just a logo on a golden background. That says something. Final Fantasy did this in Japan with white backgrounds and either beautiful artwork on top or just the logo for the game plus the artwork corresponding with it. This is a beautiful trend if it's kept up with. It makes all these games feel that much more, well, Final Fantasy. But if you do it for just one game, it's sorta lame. I'm sorry, but the Metal Gear Solid box art doesn't feel beautiful to me. It just feels lazy and weird. No other games in the series did the white background with just a logo, so it just sorta sticks out, which blows. I love seeing sequels go for a similar style to previous games with their covers. Borderlands 2 was a fantastic evolution of the first game's art, so was Mario Galaxy 2, all the Grand Theft Autos following 3. These all feel like they belong together. But then Fallout just kept doing the same thing, but with different angles. You know what kind of games have a tough time with box art? Re-releases, and definitely some collections. Like, do you just use the same art as before? Do you spruce it up? Do you do something completely different? And with collections, do you display all the games, have multiple box arts in one box art? Well, some were whipped together in an afternoon in Photoshop, some had some genuine thought and time put into them. Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection nails it. It doesn't have to have marketing lingo thrown on there like this number of games included. Sonic's front and center, he grabs your attention and you see all the Genesis title screens in the background. It's obvious what this is from the get-go. You don't need any taglines, you don't even need the title. This image is enough. And then there's Dreamcast Collection. This is just a mishmash of all different kinds of things. Colors, shapes, obsolete video game consoles, text at different angles, Jesus. Re-releases usually go a little more wild with the art compared to the first release, showing off more characters and elements from the game. The first go around they were trying to sell the game to people who didn't know if it was good or not, and now people already know its worth, so why not do something that looks a bit cooler? Maybe throw a bit of fan service in there. But while some of these are cooler pieces of art, they do lose a lot of the iconic feel or simplicity of the original. Twilight Princess HD just throws a bunch of characters on the cover. It looks fine, but the original will always be the Twilight Princess cover to me. It's not cluttered, it is laser focused on showing how this guy and this wolf are the same person. But then look at the Japanese and European cover for the HD remake. It's literally the original with more shit on it. This just looks weird to me. Hey, does anybody know how many games are included in the Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy? This had a temporary box art for the longest time, and I kept praying, oh please God, give us something better for the final one, and hey, they delivered. I could go without the constant reminders of how many things are included, but this feels like the way to do a modern Crash cover. Nintendo did a lot of these temporary boxes during the Wii U generation. It always freaked me out, like I'd see an article online saying Nintendo reveals Breath of the Wild box art during E3 2016, and then I see it, and I start praying this isn't final. Thankfully, all the terrible box art changed soon enough, and hey, the Wii U generation was home to some great covers. Like Mario Tennis Ultra Smash is one of the worst things humanity has ever done, but at least they made the box art better. I always found it kinda cute whenever something would overlap the console logo on the front. Nintendo box art is never like the most artistically special thing in the world, but they almost always look really nice. You have New Super Mario Bros. U. This box art shows off exactly what the game is gonna be like, just not nearly this clean and pretty. It's like fast food photos compared to real life. They almost always know exactly what a game needs box art wise. Striking poses for characters, good title placement. Every now and then we have a misfire, but it's never, that bad. They usually know which games need that old marketing flavor text. 5 games in 1, up to 4 players, idea book included. These little phrases often help showcase what makes the game stand out, and they don't take up too much room. Yeah, and even Batman has nosebleeds from time to time. It's okay, guys. Yeah, when all this garbage covers up the artwork for literally no reason, that's pretty raw. Oh wow, Nier Automata is riveting. I wasn't gonna buy it, but now I'm sold. The worst box art is hilarious to look at. Like, what is this? That's not a duck. But it's so heartbreaking when great games just get garbage. Castlevania Symphony of the Night, look at this. And then here in North America, they said, well, we know what Castle and Knight are. Now, with my personal preference, I like something pretty and nice and satisfying to look at. I like something that represents the game well, but I also really value uniqueness with my video game covers. Sure, if the cover isn't unique, that can also be criticism directed towards the actual game for not being original enough. But here's a game that I love, with box art I just don't like. One of the most disappointing covers in my opinion is Spider-Man PS4. I finally started playing this game recently. I just beat it. It's amazing, one of my favorite PS4 games. But the fact that this box is literally just Spider-Man on a red background is disappointingly bland and boring. Don't get me wrong, this looks fine, it's nice, but look at Breath of the Wild. A key part of this box art and game is the world. The same goes for this. A key part of Spider-Man PS4 is the open world New York City. The fact that none of it is displayed here really makes this art lack in my opinion. I also don't like how it's just overwhelmingly red. It doesn't make Spider-Man pop out as much as I'd want him to. But really, my problem with it is this could be the cover to any Spider-Man game. That does say something about how definitive of a Spider-Man game this is, but it does enough of its own things that I just don't like how it's so generic. Like I said, it feels like with so many pieces of box art nowadays, while they fundamentally look nice, just follow the same template. It's always a guy walking towards you, characters at the top faded at bottom showing a bigger picture, while box art from a few console generations ago, yeah sure, this art isn't as nice looking, things can be off model, and it can be pretty corny. This feels like an artist did what they wanted to. And this feels like corporations creating the perfect marketable box art. And nobody likes to feel marketed to. I think currently in the digital age where more games you'd never believe would do well sell like crazy due to the internet helping spread word, companies are more willing to get creative and we've seen more unique and well done covers that represent their games well. It's great to see. I just hope marketing doesn't start to take over like it did with a few key games. So now that I've proven the validity of video games as art, or at least box art as art, I feel like I can convince anybody to do anything, which is why I'm gonna start this rant against serial killers. Here's a message to all you serial killers out there. Stop!
Stop!
There are 2,700 robocalls made every second in the U.S. You might have been on...
Look, it's a robocall.
Celebrating the best years of 2018, it's the Yearies! Hey y'all, Scott here, and welcome to the Yearies, the annual yearly Year of the Year awards that awards the finest in years this past year. Before we get to Year of the Year for 2018, let's take a moment to reflect on the years we've lost over the years.
2018, 2017, 2016, 2015. 2006.
Yeah, this might take a while. Yeah, looks like we've got about 6 hours to kill while that video plays. The problem is, after preparing for the Yearies so much, the only two things I'm good at discussing right now are years and games. So I just gotta come up with some year-based video game topics. Oh! Games and years. Can't have one without the other, and plus, those two words are on my top 3 favorite concepts list, the third word being Jeff Keighley.
Here to present Game of the Year, Jeff Keighley.
It's as inevitable as this sentence having 27 words in it. Game of the Year is something that every entertainment publication squirts out each and every December. Of course, you get the side awards like Best Art Direction, Best PlayStation 4 Game, most likely to get shot in an Amish village, but Game of the Year is the one award that gets everybody's attention. Now, this term doesn't have much value to it in my opinion. With other entertainment mediums like movies, the Academy Award for Best Picture is generally regarded as the most prestigious award a film can receive. Doesn't always mean the film's that great or entertaining, but still, it's definitely the cream of the crop in terms of film awards. Games don't really have that. Sure, the Game Awards is trying their hardest, but the phrase Game of the Year is thrown around so much, especially on re-releases of games. After a game's run its course and all the downloadable content and updates are out for it, sometimes a Game of the Year edition is released with everything all on one disc. You see, that's all fine and good, but a lot of games that were never awarded Game of the Year still call the re-release the Game of the Year edition. For example, Dead Island Game of the Year edition. Really? While many actively look forward to the announcement of Game of the Year from all the large gaming publications or award ceremonies, tons of people take a moment to reflect on their personal gaming experiences over the past year, asking, hey, what was the best video game I played? Not me though, that's really something I think about. I don't make it a crazy big priority to immediately play a game in its release year, so when Game of the Year season comes rolling around, I don't normally pick one. I don't know, I just play a lot of games a year or so after their release, so the games I've played this year list generally looks pretty out there. I played BioShock Infinite a year after it released. I played The Last of Us 2 years after it released. I played Nintendo Labo the year it released. You see why I don't immediately pick a Game of the Year? So why not make up for the past 18 years of not having a personal Game of the Year by going through some of my favorite sequences of 4 numbers and seeing what games were generally nominated for Game of the Year from the big fat publications and what game I would personally pick, even if it wasn't generally nominated for Game of the Year. The general Game of the Year nominations for each year I'll be showing are just what I perceived as the general Game of the Year nominees, kind of the average ones the Game Awards and the big online gaming websites nominated, but what I pick as my Game of the Year will be solely based on what I played. And hey, why not? We'll go all the way back to 2001. Yeah, we're only covering my post-fetus era. My pre-fetus era can wait another day. Now please keep in mind, when I say a certain game is my Game of the Year, it is solely based on my opinion, and it could be for a variety of different reasons. Which game was the most fun, which game was the most impressive, which game was the most groundbreaking. It really changes from year to year what constitutes as a Game of the Year for me. And also, there's a reason why these posters are plastered around the neighborhood. Please don't take me seriously. 2018 was a big fat whatever year for me. As a self-proclaimed publisher of Donkey Konga 2 enthusiast, this was a pretty weak year in terms of Nintendo offerings. Thankfully though, Sony picked up the slack, and at the end of the year Microsoft said, oh shit, we could have released games this year. Generally, Game of the Year nominees were God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, Spider-Man, Celeste, and Monster Hunter World. I only played God of War and Celeste out of these, and it's really great that Celeste got some recognition. I mean, it's a sprite-based, hard-as-nails 2D indie platformer, so to see it competing for the same award as some of the largest entertainment productions of all time was pretty nice to see. God of War has been a pretty solid time. I haven't beaten it yet, but the storytelling and presentation are on another level, and it actually has gameplay. So far, it doesn't seem like the deepest thing out there, but nothing's more fun than throwing your axe and begging for it to come back home. Like I said, God of War has gameplay, which is something Red Dead 2 apparently doesn't have. Alright, Red Dead 2 does look freaky solid, but from what I've heard, it seems to prioritize realism and story compared to just being a straight up fun game. I do own it, just haven't popped it in yet. I heard it has a pretty slow start, but the people who stuck with it seem to greatly enjoy it. Solid production overall, it just seems that many preferred the first one. Spider-Man and Monster Hunter World were admirable contenders, but let's be honest, they definitely didn't stand too much of a chance in comparison to the others. Tetris Effect was one I saw on a few Game of the Year lists, and this game deserves 3 oofs in a row. This is a crazy experience, especially in VR. Doesn't help the fact that it's still Tetris, so it's kinda hard to warrant this being a Game of the Year. Shadow of the Colossus was also pretty banging, however it was a remake, so if there was a 2005 Game of the Year award in the 2018 Game Awards, it definitely would have cleaned house in that category. What about Smash Bros. Ultimate? Why wasn't that game nominated for Game of the Year that much? Well, Ultimate came out a little too late in the year to be eligible for a ton of awards. They're just gonna keep on making the deadline earlier and earlier. Can't wait for the 2030 Game of the Year to be announced on March 2nd, 2030. Also, while Ultimate's a great time, its focus on old content makes it hard to warrant winning Game of the Year. My Game of the Year was probably Smash Bros. Ultimate. Breath of the Wild. Okay, let's be fair here. 2017 was one of those magical years in gaming, where multiple companies pumped out genre-defining title after genre-defining title, all within the same year. General nominees were The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey, Horizon Zero Dawn, Persona 5, and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. That's dumb. The Game Awards, the DICE Awards, South by Southwest Game Awards, and countless others nominated PUBG for Game of the Year. This isn't Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, this is 2017. I think it was kinda stupid that PUBG was nominated before it was even officially released. It was in early access, a public beta for the majority of the year, and it was really only nominated not due to its overall quality, but mainly just because it was the new multiplayer craze. Sure, millions upon millions of people were enjoying the game, and fun is what video games are all about, but it wasn't officially released. Persona 5 was a huge game, but it didn't have the same general audience appeal that Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, and Horizon all had. Horizon Zero Dawn was a beautiful, vast, open-world game that sort of had strengths and departments that Breath of the Wild had weaknesses in. For example,
Persona 5.
the story.
I heard that game's
However,
pretty good.
Breath of the Wild completely redefined the open-world experience and got people who didn't play a ton of Zelda games like myself to fully beat one for the first time. I'm definitely more of a Mario fan, and while Super Mario Odyssey was an absolute blast and a fantastic game, it didn't really shake the world as much as Breath of the Wild did. It was mainly an excellent new 3D Mario game that showed off tons of creativity, while Breath of the Wild was just a bit more. But that wasn't all for 2017. Nier Automata, Cuphead, Neo, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Hellblade, Wolfenstein 2, Assassin's Creed Origins, Resident Evil 7, Sonic Mania, FN Puyo Puyo Tetris. It's obvious 2017 was a huge year, but if I had to pick a game of the year, it has to be Breath of the Wild. Oh god. 2016 was one of my favorite garbage years in gaming. There's nothing really stuck with me this year, and the general nominations were all over the place. Most major publications had all different kinds of games running for the big one. Doom, Uncharted 4, Overwatch, Inside, The Witness, XCOM 2, Titanfall 2. These were the major ones. I played Doom and Uncharted 4, both pretty solid games. Doom was a fun blast of testosterone, and Uncharted 4 was a nice conclusion to Nathan Drake's story. A far too long nice conclusion to Nathan Drake's story, but still, a nice conclusion to Nathan Drake's story. Honestly though, my 3 favorite games were probably Ratchet & Clank, Kirby Planet Robobot, and Pac-Man Championship Edition 2. I'd probably say Ratchet & Clank was my game of the year. That game was just plain straight up fun. Right after I beat it all over again. Uncharted 4 was probably more impressive overall, but nowhere near as fun. Just replaying an hour of it, I was squirming in my seat ready to stop playing. Like, I really enjoyed my time with the game, but I already played it once. It's not something I want to play again, at least for the foreseeable future. I loved Pac-Man Championship Edition 2, but it was definitely a game that had to grow on you. At first it seemed like a less interesting, weirder version of Pac-Man Championship Edition DX, but over time I grew to love it. Kirby Planet Robobot was just an excellent Kirby game, definitely my favorite of all time, but I'm still giving it to Ratchet & Clank. 2015 was a better 2016, and all I had to do was change a number. The Witcher 3, Metal Gear Solid 5, Fallout 4, Bloodborne, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Super Mario Maker, and for me it's really between the last two, Rise of the Tomb Raider and Super Mario Maker. I didn't play any of the other games, and Jesus Christ, saying this made me realize sometimes how few of the biggest games each year I play. Seriously, I hope you understand, sometimes I just don't play a lot of the biggest games each year, and sometimes I do. I generally play a lot of games a few years after they release, and I really don't know why I take pride in being tardy to the party with a lot of these games. I just started playing Yo Noid a whole 29 years after it released, so I'll tell you what I think about Fallout 4 in 2044. Anyways, Super Mario Maker was this magical experience that I always dreamed of as a kid, being able to make your own Mario levels. It was truly one of my most anticipated games of the year. My game of the year was probably Rise of the Tomb Raider. Yeah, Mario Maker didn't disappoint me, I just didn't get as into it as many others. Still really love it, I just wasn't as crazy about it as I thought I'd be. I think I'm just not as ecstatic about making my own levels as I was as a kid. Rise of the Tomb Raider, while I prefer its predecessor, was a great time, all because it gave me more of that sweet, sweet Tomb Raider reboot gameplay. It's like if Uncharted was more of a game, and I don't mean that as a jab to Uncharted. Tomb Raider simply has more game to it, while Uncharted is a better cinematic experience. Overall, 2015 didn't have a ton of heavy hitters for me overall, probably because 2014 was jam-packed with them. This will definitely go down in infamy as one of the hardest years for me to pick a game of the year. Start updating those textbooks, McGraw. Seriously, there really wasn't like one game to overpower everything. Some fantastic games released this year, but no game that was undoubtedly the best one. Definitely a lot of wiggle room for discussion. Nominees were generally Super Smash Bros. For Wii U, Bayonetta 2, Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, Shovel Knight, Dragon Age Inquisition, and Hearthstone. Outside of those games, I adored Infamous Second Son, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Mario Kart 8, even Tomodachi Life. So many fun, great games this year.
Tomodachi
Shovel Knight
Life
was sort of the indie surprise to see on a few major Game of the Year lists, and hey, I really enjoyed Shovel Knight, but I wouldn't consider it one of my all-time favorites. It's still a phenomenal game though. The Game of the Year for many publications ended up being none other than Dragon Age Inquisition. Nobody fucking talks about this game anymore. I'm sure it's a great game and all, but this just never felt like, ooh, the best game of the year. It's like most were like, we don't want to give the award to a game with the subtitle for Wii U. That just looked tacky. At the end of the day, though, I'm a tacky man who very much enjoyed Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U. These were the games 2014 was building up to for me, and honestly, they really didn't disappoint me at the time. In retrospect, I can nitpick these games to death, but overall, they were still probably my games of the year. Now this was what you called a year, and finally, Game of the Year nominations I actually all played. BioShock Infinite, The Last of Us, Grand Theft Auto 5, Super Mario 3D World, A Link Between Worlds, Tomb Raider. I played through all of these, and in terms of Game of the Year nominees I didn't play, there was Gone Home and Dota 2. People think I hate Super Mario 3D World because I talked about hating it before. Actually, I think it's a perfectly fine and fun game, just nothing that interesting or exciting, and that's my main problem with it. It doesn't really do too much more than the bare minimum for a 3D Mario co-op game. I'm perfectly fine with it being just a linear obstacle course game. I'm just saying, this, and this look and are way more compelling and interesting than this. Mario 3D World is still a fun Mario game, it's just not much more than that. A Link Between Worlds is a similar situation. This is a great Zelda game, but it's pretty much just another Link to the Past. I mean, it'd be weird if it wasn't. It is the sequel, and it does have a lot of its own ideas, and they're all great. The whole wall merging mechanic and item renting spiel is all genius, I love it. But it's still pretty derivative of Link to the Past, so nothing mind-blowing, just another great classic Zelda game. The big three that really fought it out this year, though, were BioShock Infinite, The Last of Us, and Grand Theft Auto 5. Sorry, Tomb Raider, you were great, I love you, but any and all characters in this game besides Lara Croft were effing bogus, and it was basically just a multi-platform Uncharted. Not that that's a bad thing, Rise of the Tomb Raider was my 2015 Game of the Year, I'm just saying, there's a lot more competition this year. The Last of Us was a phenomenal experience that I never want to have again. You see, I love a lot of PlayStation exclusives, but most of them are kinda just one and dones for me, you know? Like, I enjoyed going through all the Uncharted games, The Last of Us, Infamous Second Son, and most recently God of War, but I do not see myself wanting to replay them, especially The Last of Us. Now, my opinion slightly changed on BioShock Infinite over time. I enjoyed what I played back in the day, but all I remember was the game feeling pretty repetitive after everything was said and done. Story sequence, fight this mob. Story sequence, fight this mob. Story sequence, over and over and over again. So I always said, yeah, it was alright, but felt pretty monotonous after a while. However, I did recently replay a bit of it after what have I been doing the past 5 years? Oh yeah, got older, and I'm able to appreciate the world of BioShock Infinite a lot more. Still, I'd probably say The Last of Us would beat it though. Its story is really compelling, yet incredibly easy for anybody to understand. Like, I can summarize this game in a quick paragraph and you could still tell it was a great story. You'd still want to see it played out. BioShock Infinite, I'd be explaining the story for 30 minutes, waving my arms around, and even I would have a hard time comprehending the plot. It's not a bad story by any means, I just think comparatively, The Last of Us does a better job delivering a story anybody can become attached to and understand. Grand Theft Auto 5 wins. I'm sorry, but Grand Theft Auto 5 is fun, has a decent story, is infinitely replayable, and technically impressive. The Last of Us and BioShock Infinite have great plots, but I just don't want to replay The Last of Us, and BioShock's gameplay isn't the most consistently enjoyable thing out there. Oh, fuck. There was a year before 2013? Gotta be honest here, 2012 was a pretty boring year for gaming as a whole. Sure, my favorite worst Nintendo console out there released alongside a new Mario game, but the only thing New Super Mario Bros. U will ever be known for was being a new Mario game. Seriously, what even released in 2012? Mass Effect 3? NBA 2K13? Well, looking at general Game of the Year nominees, they were The Walking Dead, Dishonored, Journey, Fez, Halo 4, holy shit, I never played any of these, and there wasn't a ton of other amazing games that came out that I played. Like, what are my options? Like, New Super Mario Bros. 2 and Sticker Star? I would have played Kid Icarus Uprising, but when I bought it on Amazon, they sent me the European version. I couldn't play it, so I still haven't played this game. But, oh yeah, never mind, apparently Gravity Rush came out in 2012. I love Gravity Rush! I played through it for the first time in 2017, and on the first playthrough, I enjoyed it. The second playthrough, I really enjoyed it. The third playthrough, I kind of realized this is a great game. I love so much about it, especially the art style. The look of buildings in the distance being rough outlines really sells the whole comic book thing they're going for. I love Cat, I love the world. It's just such a fun game that took some time for me to truly embrace, but there's no going back now. Please play this if you haven't. Please. 2011 put us in the year industry considered to be one of the thicker years in gaming. So much stuff came out, and a lot of it was crazy high quality. Batman Arkham City, Skyward Sword, Uncharted 3, Portal 2, Skyrim. I've dabbled in all of these games, but Uncharted 3 was the one I saw through till the very end, and it is not my game of the year. I liked Uncharted 3, but it just felt like more of Uncharted 2, but not as impressive as Uncharted 2 was when it released. So that leaves us with games I personally loved a ton from this year. Super Mario 3D Land gave some much needed worth to the 3DS, and while it's not the greatest Mario game out there, the level design was so good for handheld play, and it made those darn dang two characters in the 3DS's name worth something. But Sonic Generations, oh my god, this was such an amazing game back in the day, and it's still a great time. I'd argue 3D Modern Sonic was topped with this game, and the 2D sections featuring both modern and classic Sonic weren't too bad, albeit they were the worst parts of the stages. Bulletstorm was a fan favorite, and it was just a straight up fun shooter. Rayman Origins is a great game, and I do dig some LA Noire. But honestly, out of all the games I played in 2011, I probably enjoyed Sonic Generations the most. Mario 3D Land is definitely up there. I played a ton of this game back then, but Generations basically made me want an Xbox 360 more so than ever before. And what do you know, I got one that year. Red Dead Redemption, God of War 3, Halo Reach, Mass Effect 2, Super Mario Galaxy 2, all these Game of the Year nominees, but no GoldenEye 007 on Wii. I love the GoldenEye remake, yeah, I said it. It was the best first-person shooter on the Wii, no doubt, and the multiplayer was a little thing us GoldenEye Wii fans call fun. Red Dead Redemption is some great stuff, just like Grand Theft Auto in a debatably much more interesting time period and environment. And Donkey Kong Country Returns was a great comeback for the series on 3DS, because the motion controls in the original Wii version make me... But I'd feel a little weird if I didn't pick Mario Galaxy 2, the sequel to my favorite game of all time, Pac-Man Championship Edition DX. This game was phenomenal, it was everything I wanted in a modern Pac-Man game. This is my 2010 Game of the Year, I only have a little shame. 2009, we got Batman Arkham Asylum, Assassin's Creed 2, Left 4 Dead 2, Uncharted 2, oh shit, remember when Call of Duty games got nominated for Game of the Year? Well, finally, we have Uncharted 2, definitely my favorite of the Uncharted series. I think I like Punch-Out on Wii more. God, now this is what you call a retro revival. Punch-Out brought back so much from the franchise's past and plopped it into a game that looks fantastic and plays even better. But it's definitely a shame it plays it crazy safe and doesn't throw a lot new out there. But we can't forget Wii Sports Resort. Say what you will, but this is such a fun game. But honestly, even when I think I had more fun with that and Punch-Out, I'm giving my Game of the Year to Uncharted 2. It really nailed not only being a good game, but a huge cinematic experience as well. Punch-Out was mainly just a blast from the past, and Wii Sports Resort had canoeing, oh god. It's Brawl. I'm picking Brawl. General nominees were Grand Theft Auto 4, Fallout 3, Gears of War 2, Metal Gear Solid 4, I'm still picking Brawl. To be fair, I've had my fair share of fun with Grand Theft Auto 4, and Burnout Paradise came out this year, and that game's phenomenal, but I'm still picking Brawl. Hit Super Mario Galaxy. BioShock, Halo 3, Mass Effect, Call of Duty 4, Uncharted, The Orange Box, my god, 2007 was an incredible year. And that's just getting started. Stuff like Metroid Prime 3, Crysis, God of War 2, oh my god. It may seem like it was pretty easy for me to pick my Game of the Year. And it was, but Mario Galaxy had some steep competition here. I mean, the orange box is like, what, 12 games in one or something? And it included Portal, one of the most creative and innovative games of the 21st century. And not only that, but Team Fortress 2 was also included as one of the 17 games in the orange box. Metroid Prime 3 showcased how well pointer functionality could work for Wii shooters. Crysis was a giant scheme to force you to buy a $1 million computer to run it properly at the time, but hey, it looked nice. Plus, of course, Half-Life 2 episodes packed in as part of the 23 games in the orange box. But I'm the simplest of men, and if it ain't in brown shoes walking around planets, it ain't winning Game of the Year. 2006, home to such classics as Oblivion, Okami, Gears of War, Twilight Princess, New Super Mario Bros., but I don't care. Because I'm saying my Game of the Year is Wii Sports. Don't worry, I have a doctor's appointment to get these opinions fixed. Wii Sports was the game with the most impact this year, and is easily the game that brought me the most joy. Trying it out for the first time, feeling absolutely dumbfounded that they put me in a video game, constantly playing it with friends and family, ripping it out at parties, and it's still fun to this day. My pick is Wii Sports. Of course, the big battle this year was between Okami and Twilight Princess to see which was the better Zelda game, and Gears of War finally brought the 360 a huge exclusive, but Wii Sports, guys. It's about time we had another oddball year. 2005 wasn't the biggest, really. Surely some solid titles came out, but overall, not as impactful as something like 2007. Resident Evil 4 is definitely the big one of the bunch. This is an all-time classic, and alongside it we have God of War, Fear, Call of Duty 2, and Shadow of the Colossus. And I'd say Shadow is my go-to game of the year. I have yet to play Resident Evil 4, so I'm going with this guy. This game is like if Punch-Out was open world. You run around and you beat bosses. That's amazing. One oddball year in the form of 2005 ain't enough to take down 2004. Half-Life 2, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Halo 2, Burnout 3, Metal Gear Solid 3, and on top of that, games like Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, Metroid Prime 2, Pikmin 2. Oh my god, this is what you call a good year for games. But San Andreas is my all-time favorite Grand Theft Auto. I gotta go with that. I love me some Pikmin and Burnout, but come on, you can do this in San Andreas. Fucking I don't know, the oddball year returns considering Madden 04 won Game of the Year at the VGAs. It's weird because The Wind Waker came out this year in North America, but it came out in Japan in December 2002, so really, what year is it eligible for? Well, let's go with this one. 2003 nominees generally were Wind Waker, SSX 3, Tony Hawk's Underground, and I will be completely honest, none of these outside of Wind Waker really speak to me. But I will let my childhood reign supreme and say either my Game of the Year is The Simpsons Hit and Run or SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. I have to go with Battle for Bikini Bottom. I picked this game over Wind Waker, Christ. Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Super Mario Sunshine, Metroid Prime, Morrowind, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4, Kingdom Hearts. Those 365 days were definitely filled up with quality games, which is weird because 2002 never really jumps out to me as a huge gaming year. It even had stuff like Eternal Darkness, but I think you guys know where my priorities lie. It's going to Super Mario Sunshine. I played my fair share of Metroid Prime over the years, but never fully beat it, which just won't stop hurting me. I've been able to see how phenomenal this game is, but I've gotta go with Sunshine, simply because I've played more of it. It's about time. With the launch of the GameCube and Xbox came some heavy hitters like Smash Bros. Melee and Halo, with Grand Theft Auto 3, Metal Gear Solid 2, and Ico on the PlayStation 2, and Conker's Bad Fur Day on the N64. Even with all these classics, I will definitely say Pikmin 1 takes the cake. I effing adore Pikmin, and there's something about the first one that's just so cool to me. It has a strict time limit in comparison to 2 and 3, and while that could be seen as a downside, I don't know, it makes the game a little more interesting. Overall, I'd say Pikmin 3 is my favorite in the series, which is weird because I didn't even mention that game for my 2013 Game of the Year, but Pikmin 1 is just so much fun to pop in and replay. It's so easy to just plow through quickly, and I really love games like that, so I'd say it's my favorite game of 2001. Yeah, Melee is great and all, but I already claimed 3 Smash Bros. Games to be my Game of the Year. Let's mix some things up. Plus, I'm probably more likely to replay Pikmin 1 in comparison to Melee. Right now, I'd rather play Smash Bros. Ultimate. Even when Halo 1 screens Game of the Year on its packaging, we're going with a personal favorite of mine. Well, that was the quickest 6 hours I've ever experienced. It felt like 22 minutes or something. And it looks like it's finally time to reveal the winner! And the winner for Year of the Year 2018 is 2018. What the f?
I don't know what to do. I'm ending the stream, I guess. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for sticking around on the live stream. I don't know when I'm gonna go live again, but I'll probably go live later today. Maybe. Don't quote me on that. Thank you all so much for watching. Kinda like and subscribe when you're watching the actual video. I'm not watching live. And yeah. Wanna follow me on the podcast? You can listen to the podcast, because I own the rights to this. New episode out now. Just tweeted about it like around 7 a.m. So yeah, new episode out right now. There's a new there's new stuff. And you can get it if you have Android as well. It's on public radio as well. It's on I'm just promoting this just because I own this podcast. So yeah, thank you all so much for listening and watching and whatever. Comment, like, and subscribe. I don't know, I'm just rambling at this point.